My name is Andrew An. I'm Chief Medical Officer at Labfront. I am a physician trained in internal medicine, also a practicing hospitalist at the Boston VA Medical System, and also a clinical researcher with a background in physiology, math, and signal processing. The title of today's talk is Labfront's Vision for Advancing Sleep Research, Catalyzing Discovery and Healing. And it presents an overview of our vision on how we could best support sleep researchers such as yourselves. And this is the first in a series of talks oriented around wearables and sleep research. And to give you a preview of what types of topics will be discussed in this series, I'm listing here the planned topics for future webinars. And these topics include actigraphy, PPG, circadian rhythm, sleep regularity, sleep staging, and sleep disorders, all with a particular focus placed on wearables. And note that each of these subcategories will actually be a separate webinar talk. And so the goal of this series is actually threefold. One, to help you understand the science, particularly from a wearable perspective. Two, to demonstrate features within Labfront that support these efforts. And three, to obtain your feedback and help us to optimize various functionalities and to help us help you in your research work. And hopefully through these webinar talks, you will become increasingly appreciative of the complexity of wearable sciences and recognize the importance of physiology and signal processing. And some of the things we will address include how heart rate and heart rate variability, respiration, blood pressure varies with sleep stages, why PPG with green light is less susceptible to motion artifact compared to red light, what limitations exist for reflective PPG in assessing oxygen saturation, how does data differ between ring and wrist-based devices based on the physiology, and why skin tone does not typically change heart rate or heart rate variability quality, but can diminish the quality of oxygen saturation. And specifically for the next talk, the focus will be on sleep actigraphy. And as you know, this technology has been around for decades, and the presumption, I think, out there is that there's little room for scientific advancement. Basically, the idea that all that's been left to been discovered has been discovered already. But the truth is that, sleep actigraphy has found new use cases, for instance, for sleep regularity and circadian sciences. And nevertheless, the sleep research community has been stuck relying on analytical methodologies designed more than 30 years ago. The Cole-Kripke and SATI method, the two most commonly used sort of sleep-wake algorithms out there, used the AMI motion logger, which had a piezoelectric transducer accelerometer. Modern devices now use MEMS capacitive accelerometers, which provide 3-axis accelerometer data, whereas the piezoelectric accelerometer is a uniaxial accelerometer, which provides only 1-axis acceleration information. So these modern accelerometers have some advantages, but there are also some disadvantages too, which I plan to go over in the next talk. So here's the outline for today's talk, which is divided into 6 sections: making consumer devices research worthy, data integration across devices, implementation science, performance evaluation, research transparency, and exploration of novel approaches in analytics. But before going too far into the nitty-gritty, I think it's important to sort of establish the key measures frequently used in sleep research. And this is proposed by Dr. Daniel Bicey from the University of Pittsburgh in his highly cited paper published in Sleep in 2014. And we focus on several important metrics: sleep duration, the total amount of sleep an individual gets; sleep efficiency, this includes how effectively one sleeps and often incorporates analysis of sleep stages; sleep timing, this is the chronological aspect of when sleep occurs, such as whether one is a morning lark or a night owl. And I might also incorporate circadian rhythm within this category too. Fourth is sleep regularity. In fact, Dr. Bicey didn't include this as a category, but later on he did, and is the consistency of sleep patterns over time. And then there's sleep satisfaction and daytime alertness, both of which are qualitative in nature. These measures can be represented visually. And again, this is adapted from Dr. Bicey's Grand Rounds, which he presented in 2022. And this is kind of sort of a representation of normal sleep from midnight to 8 a.m. And you could have, a rating of good satisfaction after you wake up. You could have low alertness, where during the day you have periods of sleep or naps. You have short duration sleep, long duration sleep, late timing, high efficiency, low efficiency, where there's a lot of periods of wake, and then high regularity, where you have consistently, regular patterns of time to go to bed and wake up. And you also have low regularity. And you can have a combination of these factors as well: short duration, late timing, low efficiency, poor quality. So, moving forward, you can then begin to imagine how wearables might be able to capture these measures on a day to day in the wild settings. So, the first section of this talk is making consumer devices research worthy. And before jumping into consumer devices specifically, I wanted to give you the lay of the land when it comes to wearables overall, because many of you have probably struggled trying to figure out which wearables should be incorporated in your research. And I think, oh, I have to move this thing. So I think um, hold here. Hold on, let me just make sure I get the laser pointer here. There we go. So Max DeZamonte did a great job at synthesizing the available options in a recent State of the Science for Wearables in Sleep Research publication in Sleep earlier this year. And I believe it was endorsed by the Sleep Research Society. And this group classified wearables into three classes: traditional research grade actigraphy, consumer grade devices, and contemporary research grade devices. So the traditional research grade activities, we know this, by the Tech Motion Watch, the Philips ActiWatch 2, which was discontinued, as we know, in January 2023, AMI Motion Logger. And these have been extensively studied. They have accelerometer, as well as some of them have ambient light detectors and also a button for event marker. And you also have raw data accessibility. There's some dichotomized sleep classification between sleep and versus wake, but there's no classification on sleep staging because it can't do this with just accelerometer data alone. The disadvantage is that it does require a USB connection for downloading data, so the devices have to be shipped back or somehow physically transferred from the study participants to the lab team. And as a result of that, there's really no real-time data acquisition. So you can't sort of assess for adherence in real time, except for after post-hoc when you get the devices back and you see whether the data is there or not. There's a long battery life, sometimes up to 30 days. And the disadvantage is the cost. But this includes not only the device, but also the software costs as well. And there is some expectations that the personnel have some training in terms of data cleaning and interpretation of that data. For consumer devices, we are aware of all the ones that are out there. There's Fitbit or Ring, Apple Watches, and Garmin. And so they have diversity in hardware and software. And these devices have accelerometer and, importantly, the addition of PPG compared to the traditional actigraphies. And because of the addition of PPGs, it's able to classify sleep and wake, but also sleep stages. The problem is that there is limited to no raw data access in general for the consumer devices. They also use undisclosed proprietary algorithms. We have no idea how they actually got their reports. And there's the issue of firmware and software updates. And so these things, the goalpost gets continually changed as they're making updates. There's a shorter battery life. These hardware is not necessarily research grade calibrated, and the data is processed in the firmware and cloud. And the advantage is that they're lower cost and have a higher adoption rate. And then the third class are these contemporary research devices that are out there. We know Gene Active and Patica Sleep Image and Actigraph Leap as an example. They all have pretty diverse functionalities. The Gene Active is, in my opinion, just a high-end actigraphy, but it has some temperature information. And Patica has EDA or GSR to assess sympathetic nervous activity. Sleep Image assesses sleep stages as well as evaluation for sleep apnea. Actigraph has PPG, temperature and barometers as well. And they're research grade calibrated, and they're able to classify sleep, wake, and sleep stages. The data is raw data is accessible, and the data can be processed in firmware or the cloud, and in some cases, a Wi-Fi where you don't have to use the cell phone as a data relay. And the algorithms can be open and sometimes proprietary as well. They tend to have longer battery life. And again, the disadvantage is the cost. for not only the devices themselves, for the software as well. And at Labfront, however, we recognize that consumer-grade wearables do have their limitations, and it's listed here, and it's discussed previously in my slides, like 2 or 3 slides before. But there are also some undeniable strengths which make it highly appealing to certain research groups. Consumer devices are laboriously designed by manufacturers to make it user-friendly, and this includes the form factor, the watch interface, the mobile app design, and this really enhances adherence. There's also multiple models from which you can select. And so this, you could choose the option that best suits your needs. For instance, the Vivo Smart 5s have an adjustable wrist size that can go very small, and so can be suitable for children and adolescents. The low cost is probably the key factor here. The low cost enables us to get preliminary data for pilot studies and also becomes financially feasible for larger epidemiological studies. And I do feel that the hardware's gotten advanced enough that there's parity in terms of quality compared to research level devices. And importantly, we have found partner companies like Garmin who are willing to work with us to address these limitations, to open up the data, and to really sort of advance research. So, how are we making consumer grade devices research worthy? First, we're making raw data from consumer devices accessible to the researcher. And take, for instance, Garmin. What we have heart rate variability, and this means continuous beat to beat interval, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's continually obtained. Like the green light that usually is used to turn on to indicate this is on, it's always on. And Garmin, to my knowledge, is the only consumer wearable that gives us access to this continuous data. We also have the ability to access raw accelerometer data, 25 to 100 hertz. But again, this has significant effects on the battery life. For MoveSense, our EKG and IMU device, we also have accessibility to the raw data. This includes the 9-axis inertial measurement unit, which includes 3-axis accelerometer, gyroscope, as well as magnetometer, and they're obtained at multiple sampling frequencies. And then we also can get our intervals because of EKG functionalities, and the raw EKG itself, the waveform, which you can get up to 500 hertz. But acquiring raw data does entail a lot of data, and particularly from the perspective of a consumer device, which has limited memory and battery storage capacity, and also limited upload rates via Bluetooth. And Labfront, we do give you the option of either streaming or logging the data. So streaming the data allows real-time uploading to the cloud using a cell phone or relay device. But this does require like the cell phone or the tablet to be in close proximity to the patient at all times. We also give the option of logging the data, which temporarily stores the data on the watch until it connects to a cell phone to deliver it to the cloud. But again, the uploading syncing time can be quite long, and it can consume the battery, and for both these functionalities. And for instance, a 24-hour acquisition of 25 hertz raw accelerometer data would take about 2 hours to upload all that data. So to streamline the data's transfer, Garmin has worked with us to create customizable actigraphy settings. And this gives the researchers the option to configure actigraphy settings to suit your specific needs. This means that you could adjust the epoch window size, anything larger than 1 second. So it could be 30 seconds to be a minute to 5 minutes. You could give some options of the type of filter, the filter path, the process data, which includes zero crossing, energy, and time above threshold, and even the threshold settings. These are things that I will talk about on the next talk of the webinar series. The other really interesting thing, the really cool things that Garmin helped to establish was that you could have 3 settings, and each of them with different parameters. So different window size, different Butterworth or different type of filters, filter path. You could do zero crossing mode, energy, or time above threshold, and thresholds, and you could acquire it all simultaneously using our Labfront and Garmin sort of devices. So again, there's these advantages that sort of with partnership with these companies that really help us to help your cause to do research in this way. We also provide assessment of data quality. And take, for instance, B2B interval, which is BBI. Garmin provides a confidence score to determine whether the PPG derived PBI is of good quality or not. And you could see here RRI, which is derived from the gold standard EKG, which is in red, and also the blue BDI, which is derived from the PPG. And you could see that the times that the RRI does not sort of agree with the BDI, the confidence score is 0. So it's either 1 or 0. And it does a pretty outstanding job of telling us when the BBI data cannot be reliably used for our analysis. We also provide data analytical capabilities, and we will spend some time in future webinars to discuss this. We provide one-night reports for an individual for a sleep actigraphy, and we also hope to provide some data conversion formats to AWD file formats for ActiWear software, um, which we know is available for free ever since Philips inactivated or did away with the ActiWatch series. This software is available till December 2027. We also provide heart rate variability analysis as well, which include time domain, frequency domain, and nonlinear heart rate variability metrics as well.